just think we're like everyone else, when we adopt that mentality of normal, we then don't actually want to seek help because no one around us is seeking help, right? Or they hide it.
Why people won't ask? Because of that fear of, to your point, what is going to happen when I do? What is going to happen to me? Is this actually going to work? Or am I going to be stuck in the situation over and over and over again? So you know what? It's easier not to. Hey everybody, this is Bianca.
And this is Emilia.
And welcome back to another wonderful episode of Evolve Ventures, where we are making evolution possible for growth-minded humans just like all of you through vulnerable lessons, stories, and technology. What are we getting into today, man?
Episode 146, signs it's time to reach out for help. So for those of you listening to this episode, if you've wandered and scrolled up onto this one, we hope that wandered back on this one. And we hope, and our intention is to, by the time that you're done listening to this, you have sufficient tools and tips as to when either you or someone you deeply care about needs help, and what are those signs, and how can you kind of move forward into those signs feeling empowered, feeling confident that help for you or for someone that you know is actually going to bring them the abundance, the clarity, the courage, the empowerment, whatever it is that they need to lean forward further into who they are in their evolutionary journey. So B, I think you have a story for us. Yeah?
Yeah, buddy. So one of our amazing community members reached out to us and asked us to do this episode. So you know who you are. Thank you so much. And we hope this episode is helpful. So she reached out and she said, I'm listening to a lot of the mental health episodes that you guys are doing, but how do you actually know it's time to reach out? How do you know when you can't handle things on your own and it's time to go ask somebody for help? And why don't people do that? So what you're going to take away with from this episode is 3 things. Number 1, how do you know it's time to ask for help? Number 2, why people don't do it? And number 3, how to actually go about asking for help and finding the right person for you. So that is what we are going to take away from in this episode. And we will start with the first point, which is, how do you know when it's time? And I think from working with all of the clients that I've worked with, so as of right now, I've done 1,600 hours of direct one-on-one coaching and therapy with people. So over the last 4 years, I've built up that number. It's amazing. I'm only at the beginning, which is so exciting.
So exciting.
It's so exciting. And What I've really come to see is that most people ask too late. And most people don't ask when they realize there's a problem. They ask when they realize they can't handle it.
Yeah.
They ask when they're at such a point where it is so bad and so severe that if they don't ask for help, something really bad is going to happen. Something is going to, some drastic thing in their life is going to happen, or their mental health is going to get to a point of no return, quote unquote, that
or their
relationship
really or something like that.
Right, exactly. So most people ask too late, and it's, I think, because of a fear. A fear of, what does it mean about me if I have to ask for help? What does it mean about me if I'm not good enough to handle this on my own? What does it mean about this situation if I have to ask for help? I have to admit that something wrong is really going on, and I don't know if I'm ready to do that. I don't know if I'm ready to have that dialogue. I don't know if I'm ready to have that conversation. And I don't know if I'm ready to deal with the repercussions or the consequences or the outcomes of addressing this and having to make change. So why don't people do it? I think that's one of the biggest reasons why. It's because it is so hard and so scary.
We actually did an Instagram live. We do these every Friday at 12:30. If you ever care to join us. But one of the last ones that we just recently did, be to your point, was putting down the armor and when to do that. How do you know if you're putting down the armor or not? And the armor really is that protective mechanism, which for so many people, it prevents them from asking for help. And really, when you think about this, the why underneath that, from my perspective and what I've seen with coaching clients, and I have a client in particular right now in mind who, to your point, B, has gotten to a place in their life where there's a lot on the line. Their relationship, their intimate relationship, has gotten at an all-time low. The way in which they communicate to their partner is not willing to tolerate anymore. And that is really, truly on the line. And that's what this person, by not seeking help and not facing this and not dealing with the repercussions, they're putting that on the line, as well as everything that has resulted from their co-creation with this partner, which is kids, which is lifestyle, which is truly everything that they've ever known and every degree of comfort that they have. And to this IG live that we talked about, I was talking to our community about how I have a theory that I'm writing right now in my book, which is vulnerability is the biggest consumption of our energy expenditure on the day-to-day. So when you look at putting down that armor, why is it so hard for so many people to this point, to what our community member had really suggested? We did an episode on how do we know when it's time to reach out for help? And really what that looks like is, how do we know when to start to get vulnerable? How do we know when to put down the shield? How do we know that it'll be safe? And most importantly, that I found, how do we know that we'll be okay after we do? When we do seek help, even if it is one small step. And in a way, I think that not a lot of us have a huge positive association with seeking out help, that it is a good thing for you, that you will be okay when you do. And even if it's a small ask for help, whether it might be guidance or a podcast suggestion or whatnot, versus like all the way when you have everything on the line, will you be okay when you do reach out for help? And this client that I have, we went through a whole experience, and I was just so proud of this client because, yes, of course, it's taken everything to be on the line for them to actually really face the mirror, but they're doing it even if they don't know that they're going to be okay on the other side. And that's where, unfortunately, a lot of people get to that place. And what we're saying here in this episode, you don't have to be all the way there before you reach out for help.
I think that's such a good point, because so many of us have been burned before when we've asked for help. We've been shamed, guilted, ridiculed. We've been giving really bad advice. And when we took it and there was a negative outcome, it was like, oh my God, I'm never asking someone for help again.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many clients that have come into the office. I mean, I do everything remote at this point. So the quote unquote office, and have said, this is the last time I'm trying this.
Yeah.
I've seen so many therapists. I've talked to so many people. Nobody has been able to help me. Nothing has changed. This is my last chance. And I'm over here like, good, you came to the wrong person. Jesus, you came to the right person, because we'll figure it out. Yep. But it's so heartbreaking, because so many people desperately want and need help, but they are so scared to ask because of how much pain asking for help has caused, because of how much pain taking the wrong advice has caused, or the pain of saying, I need help, and the mocking and the ridicule and the shaming that we get from other people. And I think that's a really huge component as to why people won't ask. Because of that fear of, to your point, what is going to happen when I do? What is going to happen to me? Is this actually going to work? Or am I going to be stuck in the situation over and over and over again? So you know what? It's easier not to. That's where people end up. And it's really heartbreaking. And I think this ties into point number 2. How do you know when it's the right time? Well, I've kind of mixed and matched them. I said 1 and then I said 2 and then I mixed and matched them. So whatever. You guys are going to get 1 and 2 together.
Sucks.
Are they mixed matched?
No, this is the first time I think I'm wearing the exact same pair, you know?
I love that for you. How do you know when it's the right time? Honestly, when you start realizing the severity of the problem, I think that's a good place to start, because most people can't recognize some of the warning signs initially, right? So like in an ideal world, we'd be able to pick up the warning signs like right off the bat.
Right.
Unfortunately, most of us can't do that. So when it starts having negative implications on you, your well-being, your mental health, your social functioning, like how you're operating in the world, how you're operating with others, how it's impacting your work, how it's impacting your physical health, if you're noticing yourself sliding off of how you typically act, like if you're usually really regimented and you're noticing that like you're really having a hard time concentrating, like when you start noticing it impacting these qualities of your life, these different components of your life, that's probably a good time to recognize, okay, something is going on. I don't know what, maybe you might not know what, you might not know really like why you're struggling, but it's a good message or like messenger that something is going on, and it wouldn't hurt to go ask. And if nothing comes of it, nothing comes of it. But at least, like, if the situation doesn't end up being anything, you're better off having asked for help than for not having asked and it ended up expanding into something way worse.
My perspective on this actually takes a very different approach, but I very much do agree with you, B, with all of this, because I know that everyone is different. What I've found in my practice is very much like, because I'm just such a believer of setting up our environments to kind of be those guardrails for us, I have and this is what I'm taking this coaching client through, and I have another person in mind too, that essentially is evoking this or enacting this power, where when I talk about setting up your environment so that you have guardrails, when you notice you're different, which by the way, as soon as you notice that, like, I think that that's the best opportunity for you to activate this, which I call a personal board of directors. So like businesses, really successful organizations always will have what's called a board of directors. These are the ones that help to make the big decisions at the top that trickle down into creating the environment and the culture, the pipeline, where the investments go within an organization. And so few people of us take actually that, which is actually a really good strategy within our own personal lives. And so creating that personal board of directors is essentially setting up your environment, your social environment, to be able to help you make the best decisions for you. And why I believe this is so important is because when you are a little bit different from whatever it is that you grew up around, your culture, your like whatever the social group is, you're going to be different, and your board of directors should celebrate that difference in you, right? That neurodivergence that you uniquely have, whatever it is that makes you you. And the people that should be sitting on, or that you elect to be on your personal board of directors, are those people that can give you the 360 feedback that we all need when we might be struggling with something, and they can notice that and they can bring that in and give you that perspective that says, hey, because I care about you and because I want to see you evolve into the person that you feel comfortable sharing who you aspire to be with me, I noticed that you're struggling with this over here. And they can provide that perspective, because sometimes in our regular lives, when we just think we're like everyone else, when we adopt that mentality of normal, we then don't actually want to seek help because no one around us is seeking help, right? Or they hide it. And so kind of connecting the dots here, I'll kind of land it with an example. I have someone who I know, she's younger. She is in a really kind of tough spot right now in her life, and she needs a lot of help. It would really, from my perspective, benefit her to see a therapist, to definitely have her electing people on her personal board of directors. But because she's not proactive about that. Thankfully, she does have women. She has people in her life that are saying, I noticed that you are struggling with this. Now, this woman in particular had recently lost her mother during COVID-19. And so obviously with that type of a loss, she's having a very different experience than all of her friends, all of the people that she knows around her that hadn't experienced any sort of loss, right? And so the help that she needs, she might not be self-identifying that I need to go see someone, I need to talk about someone who can help provide an additional perspective to me and help me in the ways that I uniquely need help in. She's probably not identifying that. And I observed that in real time. She's not identifying that she needs help in this arena. Thankfully, she does have within her social group women, people around her that are in a very kind way saying, I noticed that you're struggling in this. It might be beneficial for you to go do or seek or learn or get involved with X, Y, and Z. Not everyone has that. Luckily, those people that are surrounded her love her and care about her and want to see her kind of grow and evolve into the beautiful butterfly that she is. But right now she's really lost, and I can totally understand that. But so this is the thing for all of us. I want our listeners asking, who deserves a seat on my personal board of directors? Because the signs, really to bring this full circle, the signs that it's time to reach out for help is honestly when you notice you're different. And when you notice there's people around you that could provide alternative perspective to maybe what you're struggling with. And whoever deserves a seat on your personal board of directors, be it I have like a digital asset that maybe we'll put in, we'll put the digital asset in the show notes to help you. But like some of the suggestions are like a mentor, right? Mm-hmm. Like some of the suggestions are a math guide. Some of them are fitness coaches. Some of them are, a therapist. Some of them are a sage. I call like an older person who's really developed and very spiritually inclined, right? Like who are those people for you? Because they will help identify when you're struggling, when sometimes you might not even identify that yourself.
True. Very well said. I want you to answer this, and then I will answer it, and then we'll wrap up. How can people actually go about asking for help? So that was the third point that we were trying to get across in this episode. So how do people actually go about asking?
I think that there's two characteristics that we also talked about within the IG Live that I'll mention one more time. In order to go about asking for help, I believe you need two characteristics. One of them is humility. You need to know and really own, I need help. I might not know what that looks like. I don't necessarily know what's going to come out on the other side, but I am humble and I'm willing to take ownership that I am struggling, and that's okay. So that's number one, humility characteristic. Number two is vulnerability. In sharing that you're struggling, right? That's the actual verbiage that you could use, is you laying down the armor and you seeking out a resource that can help you not put that armor back on, but help you understand why it is that you're even putting it down. What was the reason why you put it up in the first place? And to have those two initial characteristics or skills or traits or whatever you want to call them, I think that then we start to get into the different types of approaches of asking for help. Number one, you want to ask for help with someone or to someone that you trust. And it might not be necessarily that you want them to help you. Like I gave the example of like a mentor. It could be that you could say directly to someone because you're comfortable at the trust level of like, hey, like for example, Bianca, like, hey Bianca, like I'm really struggling with this. I would love your help. Or if you know someone that could help me in this arena that you trust, would you be willing to connect me with them? Right? That's like a direct communication. And that's what I would, honestly, I feel like that's how I would go about it. But I know not everyone feels that comfortable doing that. And I think that there's a lot of kind of barriers to entry because a lot of people are so fearful of the other side. I know that obviously my approach is very direct, and I am curious. This is where I'm curious to hear your perspective be, because I think that people do live so much in fear that they don't realize what one expression like that, which you've gotten recently a lot, which I'm grateful for,
I have.
what doors that could swing open for so many people, and I would just say, don't wait, because here's the thing from my perspective, and then I'll pass this over to you, B. I genuinely believe that every single person's differences aren't the issue. It's really that they become an issue. They become an issue only if you believe that it's someone else's responsibility to get you support. We are the ones who can support us and support ourselves the most. No one knows you like you know you. And that's the thing. I want to encourage and empower our listeners to know thyself better than anyone. And sometimes that actually does happen by seeking that support of others. But what's your perspective on that, B?
Yeah, pass the baton, homie. I'm going to take this from a therapy perspective. I've had a lot of clients tell me that they called an office, they said they wanted to work with someone, they were paired with someone, they had a really bad first session, and then it was like, if this is what this is going to be like, I don't want to continue. I don't want to work with someone else.
Yeah.
What I will say to you, and this is what I've said to all of my clients so far, finding a therapist is just like finding an intimate partner or finding a friend. You don't just settle on the first one, because being a therapist is such a funny thing. People tell you their entire life, their deepest, darkest secrets, the deepest pains inside of them, and then you never see them again. But in that period of time where they are telling you everything, there has to be a level of trust. There has to be a level of connection of, you know what, I don't really know much about this person who's helping me, but I really trust that they care. I really trust that they're going to give me good advice. I trust that we're going to figure this out together. And you can't have a friendship without that. You can't have a relationship without that. You can't have a business partner without that. You can't have any type of relationship without that. So when you're looking for a therapist, what I've suggested to clients is call places and tell them exactly what you want. Be like, this is the type of person that I'm looking for. Do you guys have this? And they'll probably just try to put you with someone. And if they do and it doesn't work out, you're allowed to say, I didn't feel a connection here. I don't think this is going to work out. I want to go try to find someone else. No therapist will ever try to beg you to stay. And if they do, then they're not a good therapist. But no, honestly.
Yeah.
If they're not a good fit, go look for someone else. And what I've told a lot of people, psychologytoday.com, you can actually pick the therapist that you want. You'll see their face so you can see if like you feel connected to them. They have their bio, they have all of their information on there, the type of therapies that they specialize in.
Modalities.
So yeah, different modalities, different theoretical orientations, if they're seeing kids, adults, the different diagnoses that they work with. You can get all of this information. So it's not just like a shot in the dark of how many people am I going to have to do this like Russian roulette with before I finally find someone. You can actually pick who you want to work with. And it gives you a good opportunity to be proactive in getting help rather than just hoping that you find the right therapist because you called a facility that's close to where you live and they just assign you to somebody.
B, I'm so glad you said that, because if anyone is like unfamiliar, and I know there's so many people that are unfamiliar with seeking help within the mental health area, they have no idea what might be best for them. One of the things that we do, I know at Evolve Ventures, is one of our skill sets is actually going and doing a root cause analysis with respects to mental health. So like we know the different modalities that would really actually be impactful to one person versus what could actually send someone else down into a spiral for another person. So if you ever, like as a listener, if you ever need help kind of trying to figure out, okay, what modality actually would be good for me? Here's some of my challenges. And then what are some recommendations? Like, it's like, I feel like you and I would do a really, really good job. I know I've done that in the past with clients because they might not know that they need CBT. They might not know they need ACT. They might not know that IFS would actually really be beneficial for them, right?
Yeah.
They don't know kind of what to pick and choose. and what cross modalities could actually work really well together in their mental health journey versus what ones would actually send them in the opposite direction. So for all of our listeners, like Bianca and I make sure that we allocate 30 minutes on our calendar every single Saturday. If you're someone who's new into the mental health, or you want to add, a mental health professional into your board of directors, and or you just want to get started in reaching out for help, but you don't want to get burned going down that path, take advantage of that. Reach out to Bianca and myself and say, like, this is what I'm struggling. What would be a great modality for me? What would you guys recommend? Because that's the thing. It's like, if you don't necessarily have someone that you can trust there, at least you can trust us with that journey and point you in a better direction than maybe going blind would be, if you will.
And if you want to be around other people on the same journey as you, where you can make connections and meet other growth-oriented people who could be on your board of directors, who could be those people that you develop those friendships that can recognize those signs within you, join our private Facebook group. We put a ton of awesome content on there all the time, and there's always really incredible people engaging and posting their own vulnerable stories in there, and it's really just such a beautiful group. It's such an amazing space where, all of us who were the outsiders in our family and the black sheep and the outcasts, where we can all have a safe space for us to feel seen and heard and understood and be celebrated. So if you've been looking for a group like that, if you've been looking for a friend group like that, join Evolve Venture Society. The link is in the show notes.
So final takeaway and episode suggestions. I know some of our listeners are really grateful because they get to continue their growth journey through the podcast episodes. And Bianca and I will always, for our new listeners, always try to suggest another episode that would tie into this conversation. So B, final takeaway and episode suggestion.
My final takeaway is that asking for help is scary, but it is also the greatest thing that you can ever do, especially if you ask from the right person. Me having my personal board of directors, Alan and Emilia and Kevin and the incredible people that I have, and having the vulnerability and the humility to ask them for help is the reason why I am where I am today. It is the reason why I've been able to navigate through the most challenging experiences ever, and why I'm able to be here doing what I'm doing. So asking for help is scary. Believe me, I understand that. But it is also the greatest gift that you can give to yourself. Episode suggestion, number 15, how to gauge your mental health.
That one's an old one. I love it.
Oldie but a goodie.
My final takeaway is working to help share a belief that I once had that I had to work through and build alternative evidence to, that I know a lot of our listeners out there will resonate with. There's a strong belief out there that reaching out for help, that seeking help equals weakness. That means that you're not strong. That means that you can't handle it. That means that what you currently are is not enough. That is not the case. Just because you're asking for help does not mean that you are weak. And vulnerability does not mean weakness. At one point, that was my belief. And so for anyone that does happen to have that or has conditioning around that, reaching out for help, seeking guidance is actually one of the strongest suits that I believe anyone could possibly have. That is true humility, and that is true strength, true bravery and courage. So my final takeaway is that reaching out for help at whatever stage it is, that is true strength. And my episode suggestion is the discomfort of being yourself, episode number 43, because to that extent, it sucked when I realized I had that belief very much conditioned in me, and the discomfort to be myself and work through that. I know that so many other people are on that journey too. So I hope that this episode has helped you guys understand what some signs might be, or what might be some leading indicators as to when you might be creeping into those territories where it is actually a great time for you. I believe it's always time to reach out for help. As soon as you're aware of it, as someone else points it out to you, help is strength, genuinely. So we hope you enjoyed this episode.
Thank you so much, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye, everyone.